pickleball in the beginning is simple. We want to look for the fact that they're not moving their feet, that they're shifting their weight, and they're keeping their posture. Alright, so from here what we're going to know is some people, when you have multiple levels, are not going to be able to progress from here right away. And what we always do, just like you guys do in a certification, is you put a cone down, about a foot in front of them. There you go. And as that cone is down, what we're looking for is when we start, let me go here for a second, when you start dinking, as we learned in our certification, you want to keep the paddle in front of that point. Whenever you're working with people that are improvers or a little bit better, remember, pickleball people know everything. So if you tell somebody they have to keep their paddle out here, they're going to say they can get away with it back here. But the minute you give them a target and say, can you do this? Let's see you do this. They're going to show you that they can. So what we'll find is some people will be able to lean forward and they'll be able to keep that ball without bouncing almost every time. From here you could say, look how many balls I'm hitting as a forehand, look how many balls I'm hitting as a backhand, and you can start to explain many different things. So maybe, tell me your first name? Tim. So maybe Tim is able to do this and I'm not. That's okay. It's okay that he's going to be reaching in and maybe I have to let a few balls bounce. Maybe I can't do it every time. But this is being able to accommodate two totally different levels. Because a 3.5 and a 4.0 or a 3.0 and a 4.0 can very much do this drill. The 4.0 is going to be able to take almost every ball without bouncing. He's going to really work on shifting and reaching forward, and the circle, the forehands, is really going to be able to notice. We know from here to here should be a forehand. If it's between our legs, we're going to shift and push. If it's above here, we're not going to break our wrist, we're going to go forward. The 3.0 might not have those racket skills, paddle skills, but what they're going to have is the ability to be consistent and keep the ball in play. So let's try that. The big thing is when you guys do big groups, it's about explaining it and showing it and then walking around and touching on everybody. So I might come over here and I might say, okay, hold on for a second. What I'm noticing, Sean, is that your posture is excellent, but we're hitting almost everything as a backhand. So what I'd like you to do is relax that wrist and shift more so you can take more balls as a forehand. And then I'm going to move on. Well, you just look fabulous. Make sure that we're focusing on mostly forehands out here. 70% of the balls when we're in the non-volley zone should be forehands. We got to remember that how close the non-volley zone is to the net, every inch we can get forward matters. With a forehand, by shifting, you can go from dinking to attacking very quickly. So what I want to do right away is how many balls can we hit as a forehand? Tennis players in general, they always want to go to a backhand. If they're up here and the ball comes quick, this is their reaction zone. And what I was telling you is I play with Ben Johns every Sunday, and I'm amazed that when you drill the ball at him, his contact point, his reaction is all the way out here. Every inch matters. So if we're dinking and we can do a forehand, I can shift the ball this way, I can move it, I can move the ball that way, and I can start to attack. The minute I do a backhand, I naturally start coming back here. So I can't do as much as I can with a forehand. So let's keep going. Let's really work on forehands on every ball, pushing that contact point out. Slow it down, slow it down. We're not telling them that they have to let the ball bounce, but by telling them that they have to try to take it in the air, we're forcing them to start to go softer. This isn't a volley-volley drill. It's a consistency drill within the non-volley zone. That's it. And as you start seeing your players using more forehands, now they're starting to incorporate shifting without breaking their posture. Perfect. That's it. Try to not make that paddle move. Don't break that wrist. Push it out. Let's try to picture that we're always hitting 3 balls. It'll keep that contact going forward. Perfect. Soft, soft. So hold on. So we'll stop Sean again. Anybody notice some things that Sean's doing wrong? Popping the ball up. Do we know why the ball pops up?
Up the wrist.
Paddle face. You know why the paddle face goes up? Contact points back here. So the way to fix it, when you really focus on the cones at different levels, you're able to really keep your posture. By keeping my paddle in front of that cone, I have my posture. By forgetting about that cone, I lose my posture. Different levels can do these drills together. So continuing on that progression, I'm going to have this side go back to the baseline. You guys are going to be at the net. The great thing about having a person at the baseline and a person at the net, when you have multiple levels, is you can work on multiple things. So the person at the net, if they're not an improver player, they're more of a beginner, their focus is just going to be volleying it back to the baseline. So just rally with me for a second. I'm just going to try to put the ball right back at the baseline. If they're a tennis player, they're going to keep that cone there. We're going to keep the contact point in front of the non-volley zone, and I'm literally just trying to keep the ball deep. That's it. That's it. Keep it deep. Not breaking my wrist, keeping my posture, my feet aren't moving. All the things that we learn in the PPR certification. Very easy. It might not be easy for someone that's a lower level player, but it's a lot easier than focusing on rolling. So now let's say I'm a 4-0, I'm a 4-5 player, and I'm playing it with a 3-5. What's something I can do to really get something more out of it for that player? Any ideas? Rolling. So the big thing, if you watch all the pros play, is rolling. And you can start to explain, so the greatest thing with multiple players is they learn from each other. See, the player that is not as good or has more room to improve, they're also listening and they're going to start thinking about these things. So as you explain, I learned this from Pickleball Jarrett. One of the greatest things I ever learned is, if I'm working with one person, I'm also explaining what he or she needs to work on to the whole group. So now rolling, as we all know, keeping our posture, we're not breaking our wrist, it's not a windshield wiper, it's out and over. And what that does is I'm trying to force my opponent's weight back. Here we go. So now here, thanks. Okay. Go ahead. Posture, I'm going to start rolling the ball forward and up. Notice when I start rolling, see how I'm shifting. Most of my balls are going to be a forehand. I'm rolling them and keeping it back at the baseline. Contact point in front of that cone, all the way back. Very hard for him to progress. Coming forward. One more, keeping him back. Roll it. It's like watching Sarah Ansbury on YouTube. There you go. So now the flip side, let's have you come to the net. For the person at the baseline, this is where you start working on drops. Not everybody can drop. So the first thing you want to focus on for both people, just like the people at the net, you're focusing on that contact point. For the people at the baseline, you're also focusing on the contact points. The greatest thing about teaching pickleball is tennis is backswings, volleys. Pickleball is the same swing. How you dink is how you drive from the baseline. First you set your paddle, you move, picture hitting those 3 balls and extend. So what I tell people at the baseline is still picture there's that cone in front of you. So if someone's not as advanced, they're just going to work on driving. So I'm going to be here, very controlled, contact points always in front. Notice I have a little backswing, always in front. Perfect. Utilizing the outside leg to push the weight forward. Also notice that my follow through is never across. My follow through is out to my target. It allows me to keep that ball low. Perfect. Small controlled steps. Contact in front. So now if someone's from a 3-0 to a 3-5, let's say you're a 4-0 range, how can I progress from here? I can say, okay, let's do some drives, now let's start some drops. Let's see how that works. So on their own, they're just going to start mixing it in. We're not saying you have to drop everything, we're not saying you have to drive. They have the option. Maybe here, I'll drop some, drive some. And as coaches, as they're doing this, we're able to walk around and explain things that they have to work on. And I promise you, what one person has to work on, everybody has to work on in pickleball. It's all about paddle control, and notice how my feet are barely moving, my contact points in front, and what I'm working on at the baseline, they're very much working with at the net. Oh, that was bad. Thank you. One more. same footwork, this drive. So let's have you start rolling now. And the greatest thing is when you have multiple levels, as they start rolling, you'll really see the person at the baseline start to break down. So the minute someone starts rolling, you'll see them start going backwards, their feet are moving, and this is where you can really start focusing on positioning and footwork. Good. All right. So the biggest thing to keep in mind in these drills is as we go along, it's the same thing at the net as it is at the baseline. You're just giving them options. If we have two people that are at the same level, you can say, okay, he's going to roll everything, I'm going to drop everything. That's the most realistic as they're improving. If they're both the same level and they're not as good, they're just going to volley. I'm just going to drive from the baseline. Remember, this is not driving. If they're out there and they're doing that, nobody's getting better. A drive is a controlled shot, and you're literally working on paddle positioning and extension. So anybody that's certified, what would be the next logical drill that people can do? Anyone? Block. Not block. Block is great.
Transition?
Transition. So it's simple. So in multiple groups, when you think about big groups in these clinics, it's what can most people hit the most balls out of and get the most out of in general. So if I start working on specialty shots like ATPs, lobs, ernies, very few people can do it and they start breaking form. The whole thing about big groups is keeping them to keep their form, balance, footwork, consistency, posture, all the things that allow us to keep the ball in play. So what I would say is the same drill. I'm going to come to the net, you're just going to volley it back to me. I'm going to try to get there in 3 balls. And what you'll find is when people try to come in on 3 balls, it will look like this. What did I do? Rush the net. So keep in mind as we're doing this, the biggest focus is the whole time is paddle positioning and footwork. So we're not going to tell them that they have to get to the net just in 3 balls. We're not going to tell them that they can't rush to the net in 3 balls. We're just going to say, continue the motion forward. Don't stop. We're not saying split step. We're saying keep the paddle in front and keep moving forward. And that'll force them to change their backswing, how they come forward. And perfect. Let me go back. Person at the net, no, you say the net one more time. The person at the net's going to volley exactly the same way as they always would. The person at the baseline is going to react based off where the ball is. So if he volleys deeper, I'm naturally going to take it in the air. If I don't, I'm going to stop and my weight's going to go backwards. So I might drive one. Oh God, that was bad. Drive. Drop. Drop. And now I'm in. So let's have you go back. Same thing. Multiple levels can do this because anybody from a 3-0 or even a good 2-5 can keep the ball in down the line. They might not be able to drop. You don't have to drop. You have to, let's do one where you don't drop it, you just keep coming forward. Is that perfect?
Yes.
It's pretty perfect. His balance was there, his posture was there, his contact point was there. Maybe he can't drop. But now let's say he's a more advanced player. Let's see if he can drop. Maybe he can't drop.
That's pretty bad.
Good. So he did something perfect. As a coach, as I'm roaming, what I would say is I take Jarrett. That was great, but what did you do? I did one thing very wrong. I let a ball drop that could have easily shifted and taken in the air. So as coaches, as they're keeping this in play, and I'm telling you, this could go on for 30 minutes and people get so much out of it as you're walking around and explaining these things. But as coaches, it's important to make it individual at the same time. Jarrett, as you're up here, you should be shifting. If I can't roll it, I should be shifting as I'm volleying it to be able to keep my contact. If you don't shift, you leave. Leaning is bad. Last one. I let it drop again. Perfect. And what you'll find is people like to kind of in the beginning, we'll try to whack the ball. But as you say, let's try to keep moving forward, and let's stop and reset. They'll start getting it right. So all right, let's say we all did that drill, Every time we do something that's a drill, we always put it to a game. People love to compete, so how can we make this a game that forces them to do what we want to do with contact without saying, I want that paddle in front. So I'm going to have you guys at the baseline. Let's have this side of the net. What? You can move the cone. So what we're going to do is we're going to play a game of 5. You guys are going to start at the baseline. You can either drive it or drop it. Remember, the levels can be different, so we're not going to make it super specific. If it was a 4-5 or a 4-0 level, we might say you have to drop every first ball. But you guys can drive it or drop it, but I'm going to add one stipulation. If the ball lands in the non-volley zone without them being able to take it in the air on the first one, you instantly win the point. There we go. We'll do that again. Right, we need to do that. All right. Well, let's cut down that tennis back point. Set the paddle. There we go. There we go. All right, 1-0. I'll take those. Thank you. There we go. Okay. Nice point, 2-0. All right, one more point. Let's switch it up. All right, so keep in mind as we're doing these drills, it's usually going to be 1 pro for every 8 to 12 people on 2 to 3 courts. So the people at the net are going to be feeding it in. So realistically, I'm not going to be there every time saying, do this, do that. I'm going to be roaming. But from roaming, the greatest thing with pickleball is you can always pick out things right away. We can pick out that, how many first one was that?